ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, a disorder I, along with an estimated 7.2% of the population 18 and under, are diagnosed with. I first heard of the disorder when I was in middle school, as my friends and teachers suggested that I might have it. I was later diagnosed in 2018. I was attending a rehab outpatient program where, after being diagnosed, I was prescribed Adderall. Looking back on it now, I find it interesting how I was berated for 8 weeks about the harm of dangerous drugs, then at the same facility recommended to take a pill molecularly similar to methamphetamine. So I went on to take it. I have had issues with substance abuse all throughout high school, but Adderall is by far the worst. I was supposed to take a small dose, but I started hiding the pills from my parents, and I took much more than what was prescribed. I originally took them to help grind out schoolwork, but after 12 hours of stimulation, the come down was terrible, so I'd often take more, therefore creating multiple day benders where I wouldn't sleep and I'd barely eat. At the worst point of my Adderall addiction, I went a full week without sleeping. I went to school, my legs would shake, my skin was pale, I clutched my chest as my heart burned. My humor was gone. I had trouble talking to people. I would see spiders and shadows that weren't there. It was a mess, and I believe it could have taken years off of my life. But through the help of psychedelics, I was able to overcome my addiction, and as I went on, I researched more about the condition and its supposed solution. As I did so, I became angry. I couldn't believe that they were giving amphetamines to kids in elementary school. But now I present you with a video essay to attempt to educate kids and parents more on the disorder. As a society, we must rethink ADHD, how ADHD people fit into society, better understand negative treatments, and explore new ways and practices to aid in ADHD. I will argue my point by speaking about where ADHD comes from and whether or not it is really a disorder. I will also speak on the negative effects of ADHD medication. And lastly, I will speak on the possible solutions for people with ADHD. The hunter versus farmer hypothesis. The hunter versus farmer theory was first suggested by author Tom Hartman in his book Attention Deficit Disorder, A Different Perception. The theory suggests that people with ADHD are people that have leftover genes from our ancestors that were hunters, having a different set of skills than that of farmers. He says that we are now living in a farmer society, and that is why having a hunter way of looking at things is considered a disorder. He backs this claim by pointing out these skills and a way of looking at things. In this clip, he explains how the distractibility or attention deficit would be beneficial in a hunting situation.
Okay, it's 15, 20,000 years ago, and both my father's parents are Norwegian immigrants to the United States. So I'm in Norway, and I'm hunting for the reindeer and whatever, and if I'm highly focused on the path, I might not notice the animal going by, right? Or if I'm walking through a forest and I'm focused on tracking this rabbit, I might not see the bear that's about to get me. I mean, I'd have to be constantly scanning my environment, just continually aware of everything. And in a classroom, we call that distractibility. The teacher's talking, the kid's noticing the bug walking across the hall, across the ceiling. He's noticing what the other children are doing. He's noticing the fellow outside mowing the lawn, and then he's trying to multitask, but the teacher is saying, no, focus here, please.
Next, we have him explaining how impulsivity and need for higher levels of stimulation seen in people with ADHD would also be seen in hunters, but as skills rather than cognitive dysfunction.
Impulsivity, making quick decisions. Well, if you're chasing a rabbit through the forest and a deer runs by, you don't have time to pull out a pad and a pen and say, well, let's do a risk-benefit analysis. Let's see, deer, rabbit. Deer, more meat, yes. Rabbit, easier to catch, less meat, higher probability. By that time, of course, the rabbit's gone. One of the things that I continually hear is, I had done the action before I knew I'd made the decision, right? See the rabbit, pull the arrow, off it goes, and then you realize that there was a thinking process. Behavior precedes cognition. Behavior preceding cognition is the dictionary definition of impulsivity. And yet this would be highly adaptive behavior in a hunting-gathering society. And then the third behavior was a need for high levels of arousal, a need for high levels of stimulation. Now, in a hunting-gathering society, there are not only opportunities out there called food, there are also dangers, things that want to make you their food. And so in a hunting gathering society, a person who wakes up in the morning and says, you know what sounds like fun? What sounds like fun is to go out there where there's things that want to eat me as much as I want to eat them and get lunch. Right? That kind of person would be highly adapted. They would be propelled out of the cave in the morning by the challenge, or out of the whatever it may be, tent or hut, or whereas 10,000 years later, or during the post-agricultural revolution, in a time of agriculture, things were completely different. As agriculture came along, we needed a different skill set. Because in agriculture, there was no more danger. We fenced off the territory. Here, this is my farm now. I'm putting up fences. The deer are not coming. So the need for high levels of arousal and stimulation, to work backwards from the three, the need for high levels of stimulation and arousal, in fact, not only would no longer be an asset, it would be a liability. Because that person who needs those high levels of stimulation, after a few years or a few months or maybe even a few weeks of playing farmer, let's pick the bugs off the plants all day long, would say, this is boring. I'm out of here.
So with this theory in mind, from the farmer society's perspective, the hunter mindset is no longer seen as beneficial, but disruptive. So what could a society do to get rid of this disruption? What can farmers do to get rid of this mindset? Medication. Well, first thing a society could do to rid themselves of the hunter mindset is to not think of the hunters as ones with a different perspective, but instead think of them and label them as broken, or medically classify their thinking as a disorder. Once they have done this, they can offer anything they want as a solution. That's where amphetamines come in. In 1937, George Still was the first to test amphetamines on kids with ADHD, and his research was regarded as a breakthrough into fixing kids with ADHD, and these medications have been used ever since. Every few years, a slightly different, rebranded medication is available for prescription, the most prescribed being Adderall XR, Concerta, Dextradine, Evco, Fulcan XR, Quivalent XR, Ritalin, Satira, and Vyvanse. My hypothesis on the consistent new medications coming out is that after enough time, there's an unignorable amount of research on the numerous negative side effects of the medications, so they'll release a new medication so that children and parents remain unaware. But to battle this process, let me show you some of the various side effects to these medications.
Today in Health Watch, a new study reveals some ADHD medications may cause an increased risk of psychosis. It says that teens and young adults who take amphetamines like Adderall are twice as likely to develop the condition. For more, I want to turn to our Dr. John LaPook, who's with me on set here. So, Dr. LaPook, from this ADHD medication study, what's really significant from this?
Well, this was looking at claims database, and there were about 110,000 people, a lot of people, 110,000 in one group and 110,000 in the other. One group had people taking a drug called methylphenidate. That's used to treat ADHD. The other were amphetamine-like drugs. So the methylphenidate drugs are like Concerta, and the amphetamine-like drugs are Adderall and Vyvanse. So what they found was that, and it's no surprise, we've known since 2007 when the FDA said there was a warning that amphetamines can increase the risk of psychosis. But what they found was that in people who were taking this, and they were followed sort of for a medium about 4 to 5 months, after about 120, about 4 months or so, there was new onset of psychosis that required medication.
Can we step back for a second? What exactly is psychosis?
So psychosis, a great question, is lack of reality testing. You can get delusions, you can hear voices, sometimes you can see things that aren't really there. You can be paranoid. It's a lack of reality testing.
So as the video touched on, Adderall and other amphetamines put you at a higher risk for developing psychosis. But another side effect that I've had personal experience with, and I've heard from friends and personal memoirs on YouTube that deeply troubles me, is people losing their sense of personality and humor. In this Reddit post, user RoyFud states his negative symptoms, being loss of personality at home with girlfriend, loss of sexual desire/arousal, loss of sense of humor, not interested in conversation, and a loss of empathy. So now that I've explained how ADHD should be reconsidered as a disorder, and how the supposed solutions are extremely harmful, there is still the problem of distractibility. We still live in a farmer society. So now I will display a few different safer practices to aid people living with ADHD. Alternative treatment. Mindfulness and meditation. At first glance, these methods seem that they would be unimpactful, but from personal experience and from research, I have found extreme benefit from practices such as daily meditation. A 2007 study done by the National Library of Medicine found that 78% of participants who practiced mindful awareness reported reduction in their ADHD symptoms, meaning 8 out of 10 of them felt more focused and less ADHD. The second fairly obvious practice is exercise. I attempt to sweat at least once a day in my morning workout routine as it helps my focus and hyperactivity for the rest of the day. An essay posted by Kristen Stewart, not the actress, on everydayhealth.com explains how exercise can work in a similar way as medication, as it floods the system with dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin in surplus, so a person with ADHD is less distractible as they are not needing as much stimulation. The third possible aid for ADHD has a fairly new trend: microdosing.
That's amazing. You know, what's really incredible is that people are using psilocybin these days in what they call microdosing, taking very small doses and seeing these profound benefits.
Microdosing is when someone takes an extremely small amount of psychedelic substances, so they will not experience hallucinogenic effects, but will be able to benefit from the other properties of the drug. Psilocybin mushrooms are a Schedule I drug, meaning the most illegal, and being that, almost no research can be done. So there is little to no research in this area, but the sheer quantity of testimonies from people saying to have experienced positive benefits from microdosing are hard to ignore. The little research there is shows that psilocybin has no known negative physical side effects, but can cause psychological damage, such as developing schizophrenia early if you were already destined to get it later in life. But the negative psychological effects are caused by what is referred to as a bad trip. The bad trip cannot be experienced through a microdose, as you should not be tripping at all. If you are experiencing any psychedelic effects, you have not taken a microdose and have taken too much. So yes, there has not been much research done, but so far there is no known negative side effects from microdosing psilocybin, which can most certainly not be said for Adderall and other amphetamines. But while microdosing has not produced any negative effects, it shows a plethora of positive ones. Medical News Today has a list of reported benefits, the benefits being improved focus, concentration, and mindfulness, improved energy, wakefulness, and stimulation, cognitive benefits such as enhanced problem solving, social benefits, reduced anxiety, creativity, reduced symptoms such as stress, improved mood, optimism, and life appreciation, improved body functioning, self-efficiency, including improved ambition, productivity, and motivation. These are all wonderful benefits, but the benefit of improved focus, improved ambition, productivity, and motivation are the ones that stand out to me to help aid with ADHD. And many others have made the same observation as I have. People that are constantly searching for a better way to focus in society without having to use addictive drugs find microdosing as the answer. As for Mike, who describes on the third wave his story with ADHD and how mushrooms became his savior. He was prescribed Ritalin from 7 to 16, and his friends told him that he had lost his personality. But now, as an adult, he describes his benefits of microdosing as improving his work performance and enriching his daily life. Conclusion. In conclusion, we need to be more open-minded about ADHD and consider that it may not be a disorder, but just a different way of thinking. We need to better recognize the negatives to some of these prescribed drugs before taking the drugs or giving them to our kids. Thirdly, we must explore different practices with an objective mind and test what is the best for us, no matter the connotation behind it. If you've made it this far, I thank you and congratulate you for watching another TeePee video. I hope you enjoyed watching me share my research on a topic I'm very passionate about. Next week will be a vlog, my vlog on my time in solitude in the desert. So hope you're looking forward to that. But until then, goodbye and thank you for watching.